What if I told you the sleaziest band in Texas sparked a 7-label bidding war, and their singer turned down Pantera before they found Phil Anselmo? Dangerous Toys hit gold with a joke name, a psycho clown, and zero compromises, and they got steamrolled by grunge without blinking. Here's how they never folded, never faked it, and never shut the hell up.
Like, subscribe. Thank you.
Dangerous Toys weren't born under neon lights. They crawled out of Austin bar smoke with a smirk and a middle finger. No hairspray, no Hollywood origin myth, just loud guitars, dirty jokes, and the kind of offhand charisma you don't workshop, you're born with. While the strip kids were begging for label attention, Dangerous Toys somehow triggered a full-blown bidding war without even mailing out a demo. It just happened. Right place, right riff, right kind of unhinged. They rode into the spotlight with a psycho clown mascot, hook-loaded anthems, and just enough MTV rotation to turn heads. And for a minute, it looked like they'd cracked the code. But when the floor dropped and grunge swallowed the airwaves, they didn't pivot. Instead, they collided hard. This isn't a story of reinvention. It's a Texas brand of chaos, fast, foul-mouthed, and full of fire. Dangerous Toys came in laughing and swinging, and when the lights dimmed, they just kept on swinging. It all started with a cover tune and a name that nobody would remember. In October of 1987, a band called Onyx ruled the Austin circuit, holding court at the back room like it was their own coliseum. Tim Tremblay and Scott Dollover on guitars, Mark Geary on drums, and Mike Watson on bass. Tight, loud, and lethal. But they needed a frontman. Not just a singer, a personality. And that's when Jason McMaster entered the picture. At the time, McMaster wasn't the obvious pick. He was known for Watchtower, a Texas tech thrash band so intricate they made most musicians feel illiterate. He didn't scream party anthems, he shredded the air with high-pitched howls and math metal complexity. But when he joined the sleazy hard rock cover band, something clicked. McMaster brought theater, presence, and pipes, and it worked. And just to show how legit his rep was, Pantera wanted him. In '86, before they found Anselmo and set fire to the world, both Vinnie Paul and Dime's dad reached out to offer McMaster an audition, and he passed. He called Pantera a glam rock cover band and said no thanks. His eyes were on the technical prize with Watchtower, and at that time, he wasn't wrong. But years later, Dime told him flat out he was on their list because he had a good buzz. McMaster didn't chase the hottest gig, he walked his own line, always. They had the sound, the swagger, and the scene on lock, but their name was dead weight. Onyx sounded like a knockoff perfume, and worse, some other band was already using it. So in 1988, with a gig on the line and zero time to brainstorm, they slapped on a new label, Dangerous Toys. No backstory or mythology, just a panic move to get on the damn flyer. McMaster later said that they hated the name. It was a placeholder. They figured they'd swap it out later, once they had more breathing room. That room never came. The shows got bigger, the buzz got louder, and the name, cartoonish or not, started sticking to their sound like spilled Jack Daniels on the club floor. Suddenly, Dangerous Toys wasn't just a name, it was a warning label. Most bands scraped for years. Demos, showcases, begging their way up the LA food chain. Dangerous Toys just totally fell into it. Total fluke. March of '88, barely months into McMaster joining, they played a set during the second ever South by Southwest. Not even a big slot, just a gig. Some publishing rep happened to catch them. Boom, fire was lit. What came next was the stuff of rock and roll fantasy, a bidding war. 7 major labels, all clawing at each other for a band that hadn't even left Austin. No showcases and sterile sunset rehearsal rooms. They stayed at the back room, their turf. The labels came to them. Fights, flights, dinners, booze, promises. All of it rolled out like royalty treatment. But royalty comes with a catch. McMaster would later realize the truth. Those steak dinners and cross-country flights, recoupable. Every dollar spent was an invisible debt stapled to their future. But in '88, they weren't worried. They had a deal. Columbia Records, major label, game on. With Columbia backing the play, Dangerous Toys went from bar stage chaos to big league pressure. They were handed off to Max Norman, the sonic architect behind Ozzy's solo era and Megadeth's tightest punches. The guy knew how to turn sheer volume into pure legacy, but it came at a price. McMaster called the process brutal. Norman worked him like a dog, 13-hour shifts in the vocal booth, dissecting every scream, pushing for that grit and control. It wasn't about getting it done, it was about doing it right, and it paid off. When their self-titled debut dropped on May 9th of '89, it landed like a steel-toed boot. Late '80s hard rock through a Texas filter, raunchy, groovy, built to brawl. Teas'n and Pleas'n, and Scared lit up Headbangers Ball and branded them nationwide. Dangerous Toys weren't just any other band. They had a particular kind of flair about them that was just so fresh. And what really locked the image into place was Bill Z-Bub, the demented clown mascot straight out of Killer Clowns from Outer Space, painted into life by San Antonio madman Tony Pons, a twisted grin, wild eyes, and a Texas flag earring, colored wrong by the art department. They botched it. But instead of a fix, it became canon. A screw-up that turned sacred, just like the band. Dangerous Toys didn't take themselves too seriously, and that threw some people off. McMaster's lyrics are full of grins, jabs, and just enough filth to keep the FCC sweating. Sportin' a Woody, one of my personal favorite all-time songs, wasn't some deep metaphor. It was exactly what it sounded like. Pure juvenile rock and roll smirk. But that wasn't the point. No pun intended. They weren't trying to write the next Operation Mindcrime, Queensryche reference for those who don't know. So in other words, they weren't trying to come up with a concept album. They just wanted to blow the roof off and leave the crowd grinning like idiots. And their sound backed it up. Greasy. Definitely much more raw than glossed up LA group. It hit different. And it hit big. The album went gold. Demon Bell, the Ballad of Horace Pinker, landed on the Shocker soundtrack, sliding them into the horror metal Venn diagram with Wes Craven's blessing. For the next year, they're on the ride. Big tours, The Cult, LA Guns, Warrant, Kicks, packed houses, blasting riffs under a ceiling of pyro. And everywhere you look, that twisted grin, Bill Z-Bub leered out from t-shirts and every arena merch line. Dangerous Toys had arrived and they owned it. The calendar flipped and so did the rules. And in 1991, Dangerous Toys dropped their second album, Hellacious Acres, with Roy Thomas Baker at the controls. This is the same guy who made Queen sound like gods and the Cars sound like lasers. Should have been total victory run, but instead it felt rushed. Columbia yanked them off the road mid-tour and shoved them in the studio. And if you've watched my other videos, that's a pretty similar story going on. It's that kind of last-minute, desperate attempt by record labels to just throw them in there, get some shit on tape as quick as you possibly can, and then, of course, you know what comes next. But nevertheless, no momentum, no breathing room. The result? Half-cooked, as the band would later call it. Singles like Sticks to the Stones and Line 'Em Up got some traction, but the spark was dimming. The album peaked at number 67. Respectable, but not gold. The bigger problem wasn't just the music, it was the world. 1991 hit like a wrecking ball. Nevermind by Nirvana. 10 by Pearl Jam. A tidal wave from Seattle swept in and flushed the color out of everything. Grunge wasn't just a sound, it was a verdict. And that's really the story arc that you will see with a lot of these bands, is that it starts off by the label rushing them into the studio to do an album, and then all of a sudden, grunge coming in and just whipping their ass. And this was no exception. MTV ghosted Dangerous Toys. Radio bailed. The party was over, and no one stuck around to say goodbye. The hammer dropped hard in 91. Dangerous Toys landed a dream tour on paper. Operation Rock and Roll with Judas Priest, Alice Cooper, Motorhead, and Metal Church. Totally stacked bill. Fantasy lineup. But when they hit the stage, reality hit. The crowds were not there. Seats were empty. Energy was dead. McMaster said it best. They were smashed and smashed between Sonic Assault and Metal Church and Motorhead, trying to fire off party anthems to a sea of checked-out faces. It wasn't just a tough crowd, it was a funeral march. The message couldn't be more clear. The audience had moved on. And soon after, so did Columbia. They were dropped. No warning, just done. The years that followed were a total grind. Guitar player Danny Aaron bailed in 92. Paul Liddell from Dirty Looks stepped in by 94. He's held that slot ever since. They moved on to indie labels, stripping things down, and coming back with Pissed. No clown, no wink, just rage. The title was not subtle. It sounded even less subtle. Gnarled, raw, right in your face. Gone was the mischief. This was more pure fire and venom. McMaster said it wasn't aimed at grunge. It was about being boxed in, sold out, and shut up. Pissed got zero love from the mainstream, but the fans got it. To this day, it's the record the diehards hold the closest. The one where the joke stopped and the teeth came out. And after Pissed, the cracks kept widening. Mike Watson, one of the originals, walked. No drama, he was just done. McMaster picked up the bass himself, pulling double duty from there on out. And with nothing left to lose, they got weird. In 95, they dropped the artist formerly known as Dangerous Toys, spelled in sort of a Prince fashion, a Prince joke for a title. Middle finger to expectations, but instead of landing with a wink, it backfired hard. The record was a curveball, gone with the sleazy riffs and borrowed with swagger, And in their place, alt-rock noise, industrial sneers, Smashing Pumpkins haze, Ministry menace. It was messy, bold, and totally unfiltered. McMaster loved it. The band stood by it, but the fans, they weren't digging it at all. They wanted the clown back. Sales were tanking. Reviews were brutal. Yet this was Dangerous Toys in the mid-90s. Raw, confused, experimental. Too honest to fake it, too broke to sell it. By 99, they kicked out a live album and then went radio silent. Not a breakup, just a slow bleed of reality. The money had dried up. The tours had gotten thinner. McMaster laid up flat. The money just hadn't been there. No label support, no tour budget, no delusions. They weren't about to go nuts making records that they couldn't even promote. So they didn't. Band stayed alive, but only just a name at that point. But the spotlight faded, but the brotherhood held. Dangerous Toys never shattered, never imploded, they just endured. They played at least one show a year, mostly in Texas, mostly for the diehards who never stopped showing up. McMaster, Dallover, Gary, and Mike Watson, who came back in 2001, kept the core alive. Paul Liddell stayed on as the fifth gear. Steady hand has been through the trenches. No drama or churn, just loyalty, loud amps, and a bond that never cracked. And then in 2017, something shifted. The old record started buzzing again. A deal with Dave Ellefson, who some of you would know as Megadeth's bass player. He has the EMP label group. They gave Pissed and the artist formerly known as Dangerous Toys a remastered treatment, dragging those misunderstood albums out of the attic and back into the conversation. Just as the dust started to shake off the catalog, the real news dropped. New music was coming. In 2018, Dellover said it out loud. They're demoing a fifth record. And in March 2019, they made good on it. Hold your horses. First new Dangerous Toys track in 24 years. No frills, no gimmicks. The band was back. But through every twist, collapse, and comeback, Jason McMaster never slowed down. The guy became a one-man wrecking crew. Road-worn, stage-hardened journeyman with a resume that reads like a Texas rock history book. Broken Teeth, Igniter, a return to the tech metal insanity of Watchtower. Tribute bands, side projects, guest spots, he's done it all. When Pantera came knocking, no. When Skid Row came calling, still no. McMaster stuck to his path even when it meant walking alone. Dangerous Toys got wiped off the charts, but not off the map. Never splintered, never phoned it in. They just kept showing up. They're the kind of band that doesn't chase relevance, they outlive it. Loud, lurking, and unbreakable. Still making noise because they love the noise. Some toys get tossed, these ones just bite back. Thanks to my subscribers, you freaking rock. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe yet, take a bite out of that subscribe button. And while you're at it, reach over, give the like button a good, wet, sloppy slurp, join the family, and I want to thank you so much for watching.